the majority of that game may have been about as interesting as Utah's team name and even branding for that matter, but leave it to the Kraken. As always, they found a way to make the last 5 to 10 minutes very entertaining to watch. What's cracking, everybody, and welcome back to Kraken R&R, where the Seattle Kraken remain defeated all time against the Utah Hockey Club, winning this one 4-2 in the second ever meeting between the two teams. They still have one more in Utah later this season, and it's a game that, really was pretty dull for the vast majority of it, but as has kind of become the custom with this Kraken team, they sure did turn on at least the entertainment value for sure in the back half of the third period, and at least sent the home fans home happy. But before we get into the game, I do want to address one thing that I saw in the comments a couple of times in the last video, and that was some people disagreeing with me, which is perfectly fine. In fact, I encourage you to, if you agree with me or disagree with me, leave your comments down below, and I'm happy to respond to them as long as they're at least thoughtful, which these ones were. Disagreeing with my take on the whole Shane Wright situation, with it being the first game for Newman, and I don't know if it was really a rant, but at least the time that I took to mention that I was a little disappointed that it was Wright, after everything he's done well here over the last couple of months, that took the 5-minute hit in ice time so that Newman could step up into that line on the wing with McCann as the center, which that part I did get wrong. I said Newman was the center of that line where Wright had been. They did put Newman on the wing, he is a winger, and they had McCann as the center. Either way, though, it doesn't really have anything to do with the point that I was trying to make. It is something that I factually got wrong, so I wanted to make sure that that was cleared up. But as far as the opinion that Wright was maybe treated wrongly by not getting to play more than, or at least not much more than 10 minutes in that game, it's not that I think that Wright still has something to prove. That was one of the parts of one of the comments that I wanted to address, that he doesn't have anything left to prove. He has proven that he belongs to the NHL level, that he can be a big part of this team's success, and especially offensively, that he can produce consistently. It's not about, again, him proving himself at the NHL level. It's about the experience at the NHL level, and something that he has not had the experience of doing is playing significant time in a few games in a row. I mean, to this point anyway, aside from one game against the Capitals earlier this season, the home game against the Capitals at the end of January, where he did have 17 minutes and 40 seconds of ice time, which is pretty significant, and that's much more along where I would like to see them playing right. He's only had 4 other games where he was just barely above 16 minutes of ice time, and then a handful above 15 minutes, but for the most part, he's been kind of hovering around 13, 14 minutes, and it started to go up a little bit here recently, leading to last game. And to be fair, in this game, they did get him back above 15 minutes, even though he spent a lot of it in that fourth line role with Asimont and Cartier. They still got him into all the special teams, or at least all the power plays anyway, and they did also a couple of times here and there throughout the game get him mixed in higher up in the lineup, whether that was centering Benir's line for a shift or two, or centering his own line, both with Burakovsky and Newman on the wing at different times. So they found ways to get him, again, back up above the 15 minutes, but still, where he's at, this is a guy that, and this was much more the point, it's, again, not that he has to prove anything, but he does need to start getting a little bit more experience with some more ice time in a game, especially if this is a player that you see as one of your top 2 centers going forward, whether he's a first line or second line center. It's the type of player that, if he pans out the way that you're hoping he does, and the way that he's looked like he could here over this last month or two, he's going to have to start playing 18, 19, 20-minute games like Benir's has at points in this season. And I don't really understand what the point is in holding him back from that at this point. I mean, again, bringing Newman in, you want him to have the experience. This is nothing to take away from him playing his first few games. I think they're handling that part of it well. It's just that, well, if you're going to pick a center to bounce around and show some inconsistency to and maybe take some ice time from, I'd much rather it be a guy like Stevenson, who's not trying to develop in any way, and have Wright still with some consistency and some consistently high minutes on ice. Now, with that being said, there still are reasons that could be good reasons that he's not getting the ice time, that he didn't play quite as much in that game against the Habs. Maybe he's dealing with something that we don't know about him, probably will never know about. That happens every season in the NHL with a lot of players, that you don't know about injuries until the end of the season, and sometimes they do, sometimes they don't get reported. And for Wright, that would be understandable. This is his first full season in the NHL. It's a long, violent season, so it would make sense if he is dealing with some stuff, and that's why they're not quite ramping up his ice time just yet, like we would hope to see if he was fully healthy. I'm sure we'll see it in time. It's really not a big deal for just 1 or 2 games. That wasn't my point. I did even say that if it is just for 1 or 2 games, it's not that big of a deal. But it's one of those things that we've dealt with the frustration of, right, just not seeing the ice time. And they've slowly brought him along, and they'll continue to slowly bring him along. It just seems like with how he played over the last couple of months, that he was ready for that jump in ice time to start happening here at the end of the season, especially where games don't really matter. So if it is a little bit much for him to handle, and it ends up costing the Kraken on a back check or something, then, well, it's a learning experience for him, and it doesn't really hurt the Kraken at all in the present. Anyway, I hope that makes a little bit of sense, or more sense anyway, that you can see where I'm coming from, understand the thought process a little bit, and if not, let me know down in the comments, and I'll be happy to respond again to that. Moving on to this game for the Kraken, it's the same lineup going into the game, aside from Riker Evans gets scratched, and it's Mahura that steps back in, Cale Fleury gets another start, which, with this one, I don't think it has much to do with injury, although Evans did have the injury a little bit ago, so maybe he re-aggravated something. I think it's much more likely that it's a chance for him to reset after a pretty tough game against the Habs. It was not a very good one for him, so they give him the night off, and I would expect to see him back in the lineup for the next one. Oh yeah, and then there was the one other big change in the Kraken lineup, and that was Grubauer net instead of Decord. The first time in quite a while that there's been a goaltender not named Joey Decord in net for the Kraken in a game that was not in any way part of a back-to-back, as the Kraken, thankfully, are seemingly starting to get Decord a little bit more rest and go to hopefully a little bit more of a platoon going forward. We'll likely see Decord in the next game, and then the Kraken do have a back-to-back in the middle of next week. So it'll be a while before we really know what the pace is that they're going to go with Decord or Grubauer the rest of the way. But especially with it seeming like Decord has cooled off a bit here, and whether that's due to burnout or what at the end of the longest season of his NHL career for sure, who really knows, but hopefully the Kraken are going to ease things off Decord here a little bit in the backstretch so that they don't burn him out or risk a potential injury, anything like that. Obviously, we'd love to see Decord in net playing well. Right now, he's not been at his best, so it certainly makes sense from a number of different perspectives to give Grubauer a few more starts the rest of the way. And to be clear, I don't mean giving Grubauer more starts than Decord, I just mean giving Grubauer more starts than we would have expected otherwise, which was pretty much just playing the second half or first half of a back-to-back, and then sitting the rest of the games. But regardless of what happens the rest of the season, Grubauer did start this one, and he played a fantastic game. One of his best starts, probably of the season, certainly one of his best starts in quite a while, definitely since he got sent down to Coachella Valley. He was sharp all night, aggressive in attacking angles, which is not something that we've always seen from him. It's usually something that we see when he's feeling especially confident, and whether or not that was the case in this game, he looked really good in net. The only 2 goals that get past him, as we'll see, really he never had any chance on. They're just terrible back checks, and the Kraken playing predictably bad defense in front of him, especially on said back check when trying to defend rushes. With that said though, starting from the beginning, it hardly mattered how Grubauer was playing as this game gets going. He really doesn't have to do much work at all throughout the vast majority of the first period, and very early on in the first period, he already has some goal support. The Kraken scoring nearly immediately to start the game. Well, I say nearly immediately, it does take them a lengthy 46 seconds to get on the board, so maybe slacking a little bit from where they left off with that overtime goal just 4 seconds in the previous game. But I mean, to be fair, there are 5 players on the ice for the opposing team this time instead of just 3 to get past, and they didn't have all 5 of them right up on the center ice line to start the game. That would be very ridiculous indeed. Still, the Kraken win the faceoff, get quickly into the offensive end with the puck, don't generate a shot, and the Utah Hockey Club does end up with the puck. Stupid name, but Utah's able to survive that early press and quickly get possession, and then with the puck clearly in their possession, in their end of the ice, 2 defensemen passing it back and forth, or at least that's the idea anyway, with the only Kraken anywhere near them being Chandler Stevenson, and he's not really pressing the matter all that much. It's a pass from one side to the other that's just put in the feet of the guy on the far side. It goes through those feet, and Tolvanen jumps up into the play, gets the puck, drops it to Stevenson, who fires off the shot. That is saved, but the rebound goes out to Tolvanen, who's followed the play up, and from a tight angle, but with the goaltender out at the top of the crease to stop the Stevenson shot, Tolvanen is able to fire off the shot and bury it to get him his 20th of the season. Number 20, for the first time in his career, has 20 on the year, and Golvanen gives the Kraken that early lead. And from there, the Kraken play a pretty good rest of the first period. Certainly the first half of the first period is all Kraken. They do get a power play that they aren't really able to get much of anything going on, but they still keep the momentum through the halfway point of the period, at which point things start to kind of even out, and it's just eventless, kind of dull hockey by the 14-minute mark of the period. There's only 11 shots on goal, 8 for the Kraken, just 3 for Utah. Actually, I'm not even sure that they had 3 shots on goal yet at that point. No, I'm confident that they didn't have 3 shots on goal. They had just 2 coming out of the first power play that they get of the game, which is late in the first period. Going into that power play, they just had the 1 shot on goal, which came relatively early in the first, just after the Kraken took the lead. And beyond that, Grubauer didn't have to do anything until late in that power play, right at the end of it. It might not even have counted, as Kakko is coming out of the box. That shot gets off, so whether it counts as a power play shot on goal or not, it doesn't really matter. Grubauer is able to save that with his chest. And then the Kraken immediately get their second power play of the game, which is even more pointless than the first one. And as that's coming to an end, the reason that I'm confident that Utah did not have 3 shots on goal is because their third shot on goal is one that Grubauer has absolutely no chance on. Right as the Kraken power play comes to an end, the guy out of the box, it's a bad back check from the Kraken following a not so great change as they try to get out of their second power play unit. And it is Shane Wright trying to back check, but honestly, he's really the only one really trying to defend here. So even though the guy does get around him to make the pass out to the far side, I can hardly fault him all that much. The pass ends up going right through Vince Dunn to a completely wide open Utah player on the far side. Dunn does get a piece of it with his stick. It goes off the heel of the blade of Dunn's stick, which, if anything, unfortunately kind of just puts it in a better place for the shot to get off. And when that shot does get off, there's no chance for Grubauer. The game is tied. At which point the Kraken, about a minute later, with the last minute of the first period, the Kraken completely collapse, giving up 3 or 4 more shots on goal. Utah more than doubling their shot total from the entire period in just the last 60 seconds of it. Fortunately, Grubauer is able to come up with a couple of pretty nice saves to get the Kraken to the intermission, still with a 1-1 tie. But of course, that brings us then to the second period, which we know how that goes for the Kraken, and sure enough, right out of the gate, they give Utah another power play, which they don't score on, but they do get a couple of chances, and they also get the momentum out of it. And a couple minutes later at 5-on-5, it's another defensive breakdown by the Kraken in transition, a rush chance for Utah after Grubauer had already made an incredible save on a 3-on-1 rush. This is a little bit defended, or better defended, at least by numbers anyway. It's kind of more of a 3-on-2. Still, a nice passing play from Utah, sees a puck go into the slot, then a nice little drag dangle and a pass back up to the front of the net, right at the top of the crease. Is a tap-in goal, and another one where Grubauer really doesn't have any chance, just left on an island by his defense, who, if anything, just provided a speed bump for the Utah attack as they take the 2-1 lead. Now, the Kraken do have one good response shift a couple minutes later, so it's not really a quick response, but they have one flurry of action that gets them a couple good chances on net that don't end up in it midway through the period, and then it goes right back to Utah taking over the second until late in the second period. The Kraken, as it seems like they're just going to kind of coast into the intermission and the third period down 1 and needing another third period comeback. Well, it's Jordan Eberle coming off of a 3-assist game who just kind of from the corner throws a puck to the front of the net, where a Kraken player for once has actually gotten in front of the net, has his stick on the ice, which the pass from Eberle doesn't hit, but at the top of the crease it does find the back heel of the skate of Brandon Montour, goes off of that through the legs of the defenseman behind him and into grazing the post, the side of the net, to give the Kraken their second goal. Montour, his third goal in 2 games, 16th of the season, which just further extends his franchise record for most goals by a defenseman. And the Kraken have tied things in the last minutes of the second, or last seconds of the second, and get to the third with that tie game. So through everything, a first period where the Kraken played better throughout the majority of it, but still ended up tied at the end of it. Then a second period where they had to survive some self-inflicted wounds and still end up tied at the end of that. We go to the third, which all season long has been where the Kraken really have shined. It's really the only place the Kraken have shined all season long, but they have played well, and this third period was no exception. The Kraken off to a good start. do end up with a power play that doesn't quite score. They get a couple of good chances, and you could maybe make the argument probably should have scored if not for missing the net on a couple of shots. Eventually, though, they do take the lead about halfway through the period when Jaden Schwartz, off of a rebound from a Matty Beniers shot, fires the puck on net, and it's hard to tell, but the ref points at the net, the horn goes off, everybody celebrates. It must have gone off the second bar on the inside and the back of the net that holds up the top of it. Unfortunately, though, after all the celebration is done, the replay reveals that, in fact, there's a reason that Schwartz didn't immediately celebrate, and that's because it did go off the crossbar behind Vejmelka and come out. So, after all that, the excitement of the horn, the goal song, the Kraken have a 3-2 lead. It's taken off the board, and we go back to play as it was. Which, again, fortunately was going the Kraken way. They had been very good throughout this third period so far, and although this one, like their first goal in the game, is significantly assisted by another defensive zone blunder by Utah, well, the Kraken are there to jump on it. This time it's Kaapo Kakko who's the lone man in. Utah has the puck in the corner. Kakko is there challenging it a little bit, but it's still clean possession. He throws the puck, I think trying to rim it around the boards up to the other side where he's got his other defenseman waiting to get possession. Instead, he just ends up getting a little bit too much of it, throws it off the side of the post and also a bit off Vejmelka, who then tries to reach around and shove the puck back behind the net, but doesn't quite get all of it. Kakko gets his stick to it first, picks up that puck, and then takes it around the other side, wraps it around, and buries it in the back of the net. Vejmelka has no chance after reaching to one side of the net. All Kakko had to do was get enough of control of that bouncing puck to keep it on his stick as he wrapped it around the far post. He does that. It's the first wraparound goal from a Kraken player I can remember in quite some time, and this time it does count. It's a 3-2 lead for the Kraken. At which point, just past the halfway mark of the third period, the Kraken seem to collectively decide that it's time to really test Grubauer in net, and boy oh boy does the defense start to look pretty shaky here for the next few minutes. It certainly does make things entertaining anyway, the Kraken trying desperately to hold that one goal lead, and Grubauer really doing the majority of that work. Two sequences in particular where he makes back-to-back spectacular saves. One very good save followed by an even better rebound save. The first one, he is able to somehow get back in position to at least get a glove hand on the rebound shot. The second one, he not only makes the first save as a power move is made towards the net, but then gets taken out, halfway run over. He's laying down face first on the ice and then is able to get his stick and blocker in enough of the way to make another rebound save. Actually, to be perfectly fair, he doesn't end up making that rebound save. Alexiak kind of makes the save there, but he was still in enough of a position that the way the shot was going, it probably would have gone off the paddle of his stick. Regardless, though, another very well played sequence by Grubauer just to be able to have the awareness to get back and even give him a chance to make that rebound save after getting completely blown up on the way by a Utah player, which, yeah, even if they had scored, that probably would have come back for goaltender interference. But still, Grubauer, I mean, on his game all night, seemed like he was seeing the puck well, reading play well, and other than the two times that the Kraken just completely collapsed in front of him and gave him no chance, he was on top of everything. Fortunately, the Kraken do, as we get into the final 5 minutes, start to collect themselves a little bit and get some chances back the other way. Schwartz just completely misses an empty net on a nice pass from Beniers. It's a crossing pass that really gave Vejmelka no chance. All Schwartz had to do was put it into the completely open cage. He misses wide by a couple of feet, so yeah, I'll probably be thinking about that one for a bit. It fortunately doesn't cost the Kraken, as eventually Utah does get Vejmelka pulled, but the Kraken quickly hit the empty net, or at least within 30-45 seconds. It's a one face-off for the Kraken in their end with the empty net. Eberle gets to the puck. He passes it to Tolvanen, who fires it from the blue line into the back of the net. Bullseye, his 21st of the season, further extending his career high, and the Kraken come away with that 4-2 victory. Again, a victory that, yeah, doesn't really help the Kraken as far as the whole draft situation is concerned, especially with Nashville losing tonight as well, so that's widening that gap a little bit to the 4th spot in the draft order, but winning in front of the home crowd, and especially another exciting third period. Yeah, the first two periods weren't necessarily the most exciting. I mean, even with the good play that the Kraken, well, generally solid play that the Kraken had in the first, and then even with Utah kind of dominating the second, neither one was all that great. I mean, the chances that there were kind of just sloppily happened here and there. I don't know. For those of you that watch the game, maybe you have a better way of describing it, but just generally it wasn't great hockey. It certainly wasn't fast-paced, up and down the ice, the exciting type of game that, I mean, especially the first period, by the end of it, it's 1-1, but it really didn't feel like all that much had happened. The shot total definitely reflected that, with not too many shots on net, aside from the flurry of action from Utah at the end of the period and the flurry of action from the Kraken at the start of the period. It hadn't really been all that interesting, and then the second period was kind of more of the same. And eventually things got interesting, though. In those last 10 or so minutes of the third period, the Kraken scored twice and come away with those points, which, again, even if it's not good for the tank, does keep alive that fun stat of the fact the Kraken have never lost to this newest franchise in the NHL. And yes, technically speaking, this is a new franchise. The Coyotes ceased to exist, and the Utah Hockey Club, or whatever they're going to be called next season, started to exist. But effectively, it was just a team that moved. All of the players went, or at least the ones that they kept in the offseason. So it's by technicality their new franchise. Either way, the Kraken have never lost to a team from Utah, and will have one more chance to keep that going in Utah later this season. Aside from that, though, some other things that we've been keeping an eye on here as we get into this last part of a season that for the Kraken is going to end with the 82nd game. The young players all played pretty well. Kakko had the goal. Yeah, it was kind of handed to him by the Coyotes. I almost called them the Coyotes. The hockey club. Wright almost had a goal in a similar way, a turnover right onto his stick as he just skates down the middle of the ice. Had a chance, tried to fake out Vejmelka, but Vejmelka did a good job of staying strong and not biting on the fake from Wright, so he ends up making the save on that one. Beniers had two near assists, the one that Schwartz put off the post that everyone thought was a goal because they played the goal horn in the song and all of that, and then the one that Schwartz just blatantly missed an empty net. So that line had a couple of chances to get off of what has been a bit of a cooling off period over the last few games for them. They were by far the best line that the Kraken had going pretty much since Kakko joined the team through the last, I mean, really up until the start of March, and it started to cool off for them a bit, but they definitely got some chances in this game and generally played pretty well. So hopefully that can continue. As far as Newman is concerned, another pretty strong game. There were points of it where it's just kind of, you didn't really notice him all that much, but again, not noticing a guy for his second game in the NHL is a lot better than him getting skated past constantly and making bad mistakes. He was generally in the right place at the right time. If anything, Bilesma after the game mentioned that he could do a better job of moving his feet a little bit more, just kind of keeping things going and not standing still, especially at the NHL level. The more that you're standing still, the faster things are going to get past you one direction or another. But he played pretty well, had one good chance that he did end up missing the net on that one. So he does fall off the goal per game pace that he was on through the first game of his career. But I mean, at the very least, even without any points in this game, and aside from the one good chance, nothing that super stood out one way or the other. He certainly didn't look out of place, and for your second game in the NHL, not looking out of place is honestly pretty good. So a solid game from Newman, and we'll get to see a few more games of him, I'm sure, here as they go on to the road trip. We'll see how much longer the Kraken keep him up with the team. I would imagine not more than the 9 games that he can have without burning the contract or the first year of the ELC. So we'll see how much longer he gets to play up here with the Kraken and how these games continue to go. But so far, so good for him. I think with that, we might as well close things out here with the Kraken 3 stars. As always, brought to you by the patrons over on Patreon. If you want to help decide Kraken 3 stars or channel awards at the end of the season, you can help support a little bit more than you already are by watching this point by going to the link down below and supporting on Patreon as well. With the first star in this game, I got to go with Philip Grubauer. I'm not going to argue with the first official star in this game. He was fantastic all game long for the Kraken on multiple occasions, saved this game for them. He had 3 or 4 pretty spectacular, well, maybe not even spectacular, maybe one spectacular save, but 3 or 4 very, very good highlight-worthy saves. I would have put a screenshot of them up while they happened, but for whatever reason, none of them really gave a good camera angle where you could tell what was happening. Either way, a fantastic night from Grubauer. Second star, I mean, you can't not go with Eli Tolvanen. 2 goals and an assist, an empty netter, but even with the empty netter aside, still a 2-point night for Tolvanen, as well as getting to that milestone of his first 20-goal season. And since he wears 20 on his back, then I suppose even a little bit more significant. And then finally, the third star, there's a number of different guys you can go with here. I think certainly Eberle is worth mentioning with another 2 assists after 3 assists the previous night, so 5 points in the last 2 games for Eberle. It's definitely starting to get back into the rhythm of things here since that injury and the few games of catching back up that he's done. There's also Kako with the goal. But in the end, I think I'm going to go with Brandon Montour. A second very strong game for him. He does get the goal in this game. And, I mean, even if it's just one that kind of, fortunately for him, bounces off his skate and happens to go in, that's luck that he creates by going to the net and being, well, doing something that not a lot of Kraken players have done consistently so far this season. And for a defenseman to just dive right at the top of the net like that and set himself up for that opportunity, even if it was a fortunate bounce, it's something that's certainly a welcome sight from a Kraken player to get in front of the net and be available for a potentially lucky bounce. But again, as always, I'd love to know your thoughts down in the comment section below, who your 3 stars would be. Certainly the third star, I think, is up for some debate. The first 2, I feel like, are pretty solid. But I'd love to know your thoughts on that game and how we're feeling going into this next stretch of games. Another game on Sunday, and then the back-to-back in the middle of the week next week. And the Kraken, while it's nice to see them win, and it's definitely fun, I'm not going to complain about a Kraken win ever. Yeah, with Nashville starting to, or at least losing this one game to the Ducks, and, well, Buffalo falling apart, the Kraken are going to have to try and figure out how to keep pace with them in this draft order if they do want to stay inside the top 5 as far as potential of maybe getting through the lottery one of those top 2 picks, and a draft that the top 4 or 5 guys are some pretty solid talent, and it drops off pretty quick from there. So there is some importance for the Kraken not winning too many more games. And on that cheery note, we'll call things for this one. Still a fun Kraken win. At least the last 10 minutes or so were pretty fun. Until next time, though, stay safe out there, be good to each other, God bless, and go Kraken.